Episode 7. October 17th, 2007. Wednesday, 2:55 p.m. New Delhi, India. Kashmira had watched as Jennifer navigated her way through the people in the lobby. Never had Kashmira been more aggravated by a next of kin. When she'd been able to talk the woman into coming to India, she thought the problem of Maria Hernandez's body was essentially over. But now it was ascending to another level of urgency, with not one but two forensic investigators on their way to lend their thoughts. Kashmira knew that CEO Rajish Bhurgava was not going to be happy. The second Jennifer exited from the lobby, Kashmira walked out of her office and down the hall to where Rajish's corner office was located. "Is he available?" Kashmira questioned Rajish's private secretary. "I believe so," the secretary said, "but he's not in a good mood." She checked using the intercom and then waved Kashmira as another call came in on an outside line. Between calls, Rajish was reading over a stack of letters and then signing them with his rapid scroll. In contrast to his casual cowboy outfits he wore when called in at night, he was wearing a Western designer suit, white shirt and a Gucci tie. "Did she come back this afternoon?" Rajish questioned her when Kashmira shut his office door and approached his desk. Over the lunch hour she had briefed him about Jennifer's intransigence that morning and how self-willed she was, but had ended by saying she was optimistic Jennifer would be more reasonable after some sleep. She'd also conveyed to Rajish Jennifer's brief talk of an autopsy. This new information had provoked Rajish to comment irritably that there would be no autopsy under any circumstances. He added that the last thing he wanted to do was take the risk of some true pathologies being found that should have been known before the surgery. Kashmira also told him that Jennifer had brought up the name of Ben Fatty, and Rajish had questioned how Jennifer had learned about their death. Kashmira had confessed she had no idea. All in all, Rajish was no fan of Jennifer Hernandez. "She just left," Kashmira said with a nod in answer to Rajish's question. "And?" Rajish snapped. With his second death in so many nights, he was in a foul mood. Once again, the night before, he'd been called by the powerful Ramesh Srivastav and informed that CNN International had reported another death at Rajish's hospital before the hospital had called him. Although the highly placed public servant hadn't actually threatened Rajish directly, the implication of blame had been uncomfortably clear. "It's getting worse, I'm afraid." She now says that she wants to wait until Friday before making a decision. Apparently, the dead woman worked for someone who has subsequently become a forensic pathologist. This forensic pathologist is apparently arriving tomorrow night. Rajish slapped a hand to his forehead and forcibly rubbed his temples with his thumb and forefinger. "This can't be happening," he moaned. "It gets worse. The woman is bringing her husband, and he is also a forensic pathologist." In a minor panic, Rajish lowered his hand and stared at Kashmira. "We'll be dealing with two American forensic specialists?" "It appears that way." "Did you make it absolutely clear to Miss Hernandez that there will be no autopsy?" "I did, both this morning and this afternoon. It's my understanding that the reason that this woman who is on her way is a forensic pathologist is incidental to why she is coming, so we shouldn't jump to conclusions." Rajish tipped back in his chair until he was looking directly up at the ceiling. "What did I do to deserve these problems? All I'm trying to do is keep it all out of the media beyond the initial CNN segments. In that regard, things are still quiet. There's been no media people here yesterday or today. thank the God for all favors, but that might change at any moment, especially now with the two deaths. Miss Hernandez is potentially interfering in that situation also. There was a loud squeak as Rajish suddenly tipped forward and gaped at Kashmira. How is she managing that? Somehow the widow and she got together. Lucinda Benfatti called back a little while ago to re-emphasize that she too doesn't want her husband's body touched until her sons get here Friday. As you know from last night, she had already said that, but both of us thought the chances were good that she'd changed her mind today when I spoke with her. No deal. In fact, she mentioned Jennifer's forensic pathologist friends coming, and that she'd asked Jennifer if her friends could look at her husband's case as well. If the media gets wind of this, they might jump into it. Rajish slammed his palm down on his desk. Several of the letters waiting to be read swooped off into the air. This woman is a scourge, spreading her stubbornness to others. I worry this situation is rapidly growing beyond our capability to keep it under wraps. Most people who are grieving are too emotionally paralyzed to cause trouble. What is wrong with this Hernandez girl? She is self-willed, as I mentioned, Kashmira agreed. Is she spiritual? I haven't any idea. She's not said anything to make me think one way or the other. Why do you ask? I was just thinking if she was spiritual, we could tempt her with her grandmother's body. How so? Offer to have it cremated at the world-famous burning ghats of Varanasi and the ashes placed in the Ganges. But that is a privilege reserved for Hindus. Rajesh made a gesture as if swatting a fly. Some extra consideration for the Brahmin of the ghats of Jalore would solve the issue. Perhaps Miss Hernandez could be tempted. It could be touted as an extra favor to the departed. We could offer it to Mrs. Benfatti as well. I'm not optimistic, Kashmira said. Neither strikes me as particularly religious. In being cremated in Varanasi only has one true meaning for Hindus, yet I'll give it a try. The Hernandez girl herself admitted she might think differently after she had gotten some sleep. She is exhausted and suffering jet lag. Maybe such a bribe would push her over the edge. We must get these bodies out of that cafeteria cooler, Rajesh emphasized, especially with the hospital currently under observation by the International Joint Commission. We can't afford to fail for such an incidental violation. Meanwhile, I'll give Ramesh Srivastav a call back and report we are having a particularly difficult time with the Hernandez woman. I have tried my best with her, I assure you. I've been very direct, more so with any other next of kin. I know you have. The problem is we have limited resources. That is not the situation with someone like Ramesh Srivastav. He has the weight of the entire Indian bureaucracy behind him. If he so desired, he could even keep the two forensic friends of Miss Hernandez out of the country. I'll keep you informed of any changes, Kashmira said as she turned to go. Please do, Rajesh said with a brief wave. He used his intercom to ask his secretary to get Mr. Ramesh Srivastav on the line. He wasn't looking forward to it. He knew how powerful Srivastav was and how he could get Rajesh fired with the snap of his fingers. October 17th, 2007. Wednesday, 3:15 p.m. New Delhi, India. It had not been a good day for Ramesh Srivastav, starting the moment he got into his office in the morning. The Deputy Secretary of State for Health had called to tell him that the Secretary of State for Health was furious about the second CNN International segment being aired concerning India's nascent medical tourism industry. Then the calls had never stopped. They came from half a dozen joint secretaries of the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, the president of the Indian Healthcare Federation, and even the Secretary of State for Tourism, all reminding him that he happened to be presiding over the Department of Medical Tourism when it was experiencing the most negative international PR that it had ever experienced. All the callers also reminded him that they had the power to end his career if he didn't do something and do it fast. The problem was, he didn't know what to do. He tried to figure out how CNN International was getting the tips, but without success. A Mr. Rajish Bhurgava is online at this moment, Ramesh's secretary said, as Ramesh came through his office door, returning from his 3-hour lunch. Ramesh dashed into his inner office and lashed the receiver off the hook. "Have you found the leak?" he demanded straight off. "Just a moment," Rajish's secretary said. "I'll put Mr. Bhurgava on." Ramesh silently cursed as he flopped down in his desk chair. He was a large, balding man with watery eyes and deep scars on his cheekbones from his adolescent acne. He tapped his fat, impatient fingers on the desk. As soon as Rajish Bhurgava came on the line, Ramesh blurted out the question again, with equal emotion. "We haven't," Rajish admitted. "I have spoken yet again at length with the chief of the medical staff. We still believe the most likely culprit is one of the academic doctors, who also have admitting privileges here for their relatively few private patients. We know some of them are rabidly against the government's granting us the incentives and tax breaks it has at the expense of adequately funding the control of communicable diseases in the rural areas. What he's doing now is trying to see if any of the most outspoken ones were here in the hospital, both Monday night and last night." "What does he say about the deaths themselves?" Ramesh grumbled. 2 in 2 nights is intolerable. What are you people doing wrong? With CNN beaconing these fatalities around the world 7 or 8 times a day, you have essentially negated 6 months of our ad campaign, especially in America, our biggest target. I asked him the same question. He is entirely baffled. Neither patient had warning symptoms or signs, either from their doctors or during their admitting tests. Did they have cardiograms here preoperatively? Yes, of course. They had cardiograms and both arrived with clean reports from American cardiologists. Our chief of medical staff said that even in retrospect, there would have been no way to predict what happened. Both surgeries and post-operative courses were without the incident. What about the problems with the Hernandez girl? Had that at least been taken care of? I'm afraid not, Rajesh admitted. She's not decided on the disposition of the body, and she now has begun talking about possibly wanting an autopsy done. Why? We're not entirely certain, other than her belief that her grandmother's heart was in fine shape. I don't want an autopsy, Ramesh stated categorically. There's no way it could help us. If the autopsy were to be clean, they wouldn't use it to exonerate us because there is no story. If the autopsy shows pathology we should have known about, they would crucify us. No, there is to be no autopsy. To complicate this, Miss Hernandez has apparently contacted a former client of the deceased. She and her husband, both of whom are forensic pathologists, are on their way and will be in Delhi on Friday. Good grief, Ramesh said. Well, if they make a formal application for an autopsy, make sure it is taken by one of the magistrates we are accustomed to dealing with. I'll do my best, Rajish said, but perhaps with your connections you might question whether we want them here at all. I would need more warning. Otherwise they get stopped only at the airport, and that and of itself could cause a media problem if it gets associated with the already notorious private hospital deaths reported by CNN. The free media is such a bore, and they love these gossipy type stories. There is one other way that the Hernandez girl is causing mischief. She had seemingly sought out the Benfatti woman this morning and convinced her to delay giving us permission to dispose properly of her husband's body, in the same way she is denying us the access to her grandmother's. "No!" Ramesh exclaimed with disbelief. "I'm afraid so. I'm beginning to think, as I hear from my case manager, that she is deliberately trying to cause trouble. I'm even beginning to believe she is starting to become paranoid and hold us accountable, as if we have caused this tragedy deliberately." "That's it then," Ramesh said. "We cannot let this go on." "Is there something you can do, sir?" Rajish asked hopefully. "Perhaps," Ramesh said. "We cannot sit passively and let this woman have free rein until her paranoia is somehow satisfied." "I couldn't agree more. Keep me informed of any and all developments," Ramesh said. "Absolutely," Rajish answered. Ramesh hung up the receiver and turned to the keyboard at his workstation. Going into his address book, he found the mobile number of Inspector Naresh Prasad of the New Delhi Police. Picking up the phone receiver back up, he placed the call. Since the men hadn't spoken in almost 6 months, they traded some personal information before Ramesh got around to the reason for the call. "We here at the Department of Medical Tourism have a problem that needs your expertise." "I'm listening," Naresh said. "Is this a good time to talk?" "It doesn't get much better." "There is a young woman named Jennifer Hernandez whose grandmother passed away Monday night at the Queen Victoria Hospital of an unfortunate heart attack. Somehow CNN got a hold of this story and put it on air as a way of questioning our record of safety. That's not good." "That is an understatement," Ramesh said. He then went on to tell Naresh the entire problem, including the details of the second death. He then enumerated all the things that Jennifer had done and was going to make herself persona non grata. "This affair is beginning to have a serious deleterious effect on our medical tourism ad campaign, which could then impact our ability to meet our goals. I don't know if you have been kept completely up to date, but we have upped our estimates such that Indian medical tourism is to be a $2.2 billion a year industry by 2010. Naresh whistled into his phone. He was duly impressed. "I hadn't heard those figures. Are you people aiming to catch IT? The information technology people are going to be envious. They believe they have become the hereditary kings of foreign exchange." "Unfortunately, this current problem could seriously impact our goal," Ramesh said, ignoring Naresh's question. "We need help." "That's what we are here for, what we can do." "There's 2 parts. One part for your unit in general, and one part for you in particular. Concerning your unit, we need an investigation to uncover who is supplying CNN International with confidential information. The CEO of Queen Victoria and his Chief of Medical Staff believe it to be a radical academic MD who also has admitting privileges. How many there are at the Victoria, I don't know, but I want them investigated now. I want to know who this person is." "That can be arranged. I'll put my best men on it. What is my part?" "The girl, Jennifer Hernandez. I want her taken care of. Shouldn't be difficult. She is staying at the Amal." "Why not call up one of your equals in immigration? Have her picked up and deported. Problem over." My sense is that she's feisty, stubborn, and resourceful. If immigration picks her up, I'd worry that she'd make a fuss. And if the media associates her case with the death reported by CNN, there could be an even bigger story about governmental cover-up. That could make everything decidedly worse. Good point. What exactly do you mean taken care of? Let's be specific. I leave that to your well-earned reputation for creativity. I want her to stop being a potential thorn in our side. However you can accomplish that, I'm content. Actually, it's better if I don't know than if I'm asked at a later date. As one who was interested in her behavior, I don't have to lie. What if I can assure you she means no harm and her current apparent threat is bogus? That would be satisfactory, of course, particularly if your team can provide us with a physician mole. I need to attack this problem from both ends. Can I assume my compensation will be the usual? Let's say comparable. Check things out. Follow her. Remember, we don't want her to become the news, and we surely don't want her to be any kind of martyr. As for the compensation, it should depend on the degree of difficulty. You and I go back a ways. We can trust each other. You'll hear from me. Ramesh disconnected the call. Toward the end of the conversation with the industrial policeman, he had another idea about the Hernandez problem. A possible solution that would be easier, cheaper, and probably better, as it wouldn't involve the government. All he had to do was get someone he knew angry enough. And it so happened that the individual Ramesh had in mind was easy to get angry when the issue involved money. Ramesh was surprised he had not thought of Shashank Malhotra earlier. After all, the man regularly paid him off and even taken him on a memorable trip to Dubai. "Hello, my good friend," Shashank enthused, several octaves louder than necessary. "Wonderful to hear from you. How's the family?" Ramesh could visually imagine Shashank in his palatial office, overlooking the fashionable Connaught Place. Shashank was one of India's new-style businessmen who were into a wide variety of pursuits, some legal, some less so. Of late, he'd become particularly enamored of healthcare and saw medical tourism as the path to an easy second fortune. Over the last 3 years, he'd invested a substantial sum and was the principal stockholder in a company that, appropriately enough, in relation to the current problem, owned the Queen Victoria hospitals in Delhi, Bangalore, and Chennai, and the Esculapian medical centers in Delhi, Mumbai, and Hyderabad. It was also he who had recently contributed the lion's share of the cost of the recent ad campaign in Europe and North America, touting India as a 21st century healthcare destination. Shashank Malhotra was a major player. After an appropriate amount of niceties had been exchanged, Ramesh got down to business. "The reason for my call is a problem at Queen Victoria Hospital, here in Delhi. Have you been briefed?" "I heard there are some sort of minor problem," Shashank said wearily. He had heard the change in Ramesh's voice and was famously sensitive to the word problem, as it usually meant the necessity of spending money. And he was particularly touchy about problems associated with both the Queen Victoria Hospital Group and the Esculapian medical centers, as they were the newest members of his financial empire and had yet to reach profitability. "It's more than a minor," Ramesh said, "and I think you should know about it. Do you have a minute?" "Are you kidding? Certainly I want to hear it." Ramesh told Shashank the story pretty much the same way he told it to Inspector Naresh Prasad, but minus the optimistic government economic predictions on medical tourism. as Shashank was already well aware of those. As Ramesh progressed, he knew Shashank was appreciating both the importance and the urgency of this situation because of the pointed questions he posed as Ramesh continued. When Ramesh finished and fell silent, Shashank remained silent as well. Ramesh let him stew, particularly about the path of erasing most of the gain from the ad campaign. "I think you should have told me all this a little sooner," Shashank growled. He sounded like a completely different person. His voice was now low and menacing. "I think everything should be fine if this young woman will make up her mind about her grandmother's body and then she heads home. I'm sure you know someone qualified to make those suggestions, someone whom she might listen to. Where is she staying?" "At the Amal Palace." Ramesh found himself holding a dead line. October 17th, 2007, Wednesday, 3:45 p.m., New Delhi, India. Veena glanced at her watch. Report had never seemed to take so long. She was supposed to have been off at 3:30, and it was already 4:45. "That's it then," Nurse Kumar said to the evening head nurse. "Any questions?" "I don't believe so," the evening head nurse said. "Thank you." Everyone stirred. Veena made a beeline to the elevator while the others erupted in casual conversation. Samira saw her and had to hurry to catch up. "Where are you going?" Samira questioned. Veena didn't answer. Her eyes darted from elevator to elevator to see which one would be arriving first. "Veena!" Samira voiced with emotion. "Are you still not going to talk with me? I think you are carrying this too far." Veena ignored Samira and stepped over to the door of the arriving elevator. Samira followed. "I know it is reasonable for you to be angry with me initially," Samira whispered after moving behind her friend. Several of the other nurses joined them, chattering about the day's events. "But after you had had time to think about it, I thought you would understand. I did it for you as much as for myself and the others." The elevator arrived. Everyone boarded. Veena moved into the back of the car, turned and faced forward. Samira joined her. "This silence is not fair," Samira continued in a whisper. "Don't you even want to know the details about last night?" "No," Veena replied, also in a whisper. They were the first words she had spoken directly to Samira since Monday. When Cal had revealed to Veena that he knew about her family's problems. The only other person in the world who knew about it was Samira, so the source was obvious. "Thank you for talking to me," Samira said, keeping her voice low over the babble of the others. "I know I wasn't supposed to tell you about your father, but this seemed different. Durrell told me our emigrating depended on it. I was also promised your problem would be taken care of and you'd be free, and so would your family." "My family has been shamed," Veena said. "Irreversibly shamed." Samira didn't say anything. She knew that Veena initially would be absorbed in thinking about her extended family and its reputation, instead of rejoicing in her newly gained freedom and that of her sisters from a horrid father. But she expected her to promptly see the light. More than ever, Samira wanted to escape what she thought were the cultural shackles of current-day India. She couldn't wait for Nurses International to help her emigrate. With the shift changing, the elevator stopped on every floor. "I'm not going directly back to the bungalow," Veena said, keeping her eyes glued to the floor indicator. "I'm going to stop in and see Srimati Kashmira Varini." "What on earth for?" Samira questioned in a whisper. "The granddaughter of my victim came to see me this afternoon. and I found it very uncomfortable having to speak with her. Cal never suggested I'd have to do anything like that. She scares me. She told me she's not happy about her grandmother's death, and she's looking into it. I don't like it. The elevator came to a bumpy stop at the lobby level and disgorged its full load of passengers. After only a few steps, Veena came to a halt. Samira did the same. Maybe it would be best if you didn't do anything until we talk with Cal and Durrell, Samira said, after making certain no one was listening. I want to find out where she's staying, in case Cal wants to know. I'm sure the case manager knows. I imagine she does. The granddaughter mentioned your victim as well. In what regard? Samira asked with an increasing alarm. She wondered if the same person who'd found Mrs. Hernandez also found Mr. Pinfetti. Why would she care? I don't know. Now you have me concerned, Samira said. I'll wait for you here, Samira said, as Veena turned and headed toward the information desk. She merely waved an acknowledgement over her shoulder. Rounding the desk, Veena peered beyond Kashmira Parini's open door. She was hoping the case manager would be alone, and she was. Excuse me, Veena called out, and bowed as Kashmira looked up. May I ask you a question? Of course, Kashmira replied. Returning the greeting, Veena advanced to the desk. I spoke with Mrs. Hernandez's granddaughter, Jennifer, this afternoon. Yes, so Nurse Kumar informed me when she called to let me know she was here. Sit down. Kashmira pointed with her chin toward one of the free chairs in her office. Although Veena was planning on staying only for a few moments, she sat down. I'm interested in your reaction to her. We are finding her difficult to deal with. In what regard? Veena asked, feeling progressively more unsettled toward the American. In most every regard. We need her simply to stipulate what she wants to do with her grandmother's body and be done with it, so we can dispose of the body. But she refuses. I'm afraid she has some paranoid notion this tragedy was either medical error or intentional. She even arranged that several American forensic pathologists are coming for heaven knows what. I have repeatedly made it clear there is to be no autopsy. Veena had reflexively sucked in a bit of air when she heard Kashmira say intentional and hoped it hadn't been apparent. The sense that Jennifer Hernandez was potential trouble had ratcheted up several notches. Are you all right? Kashmira asked, leaning toward Veena. Yes, I'm fine. It's been a long day, is all. Do you need a drink of water or anything? I'm fine. Why I stopped in was to find out where Jennifer Hernandez is staying. Because I was thinking of calling her. I want to be certain I've answered all her questions. When she was here, I was very busy, and Nurse Kumar had to interrupt to get me back to my patient. She's at the Amal, Kashmira said. During the time you were talking with her, how did she seem? Was she hostile at all? With me, she goes back and forth. I don't know if it is because she was exhausted or angry. No, not hostile. In fact, the opposite. She acted sympathetic that her grandmother had been my first patient death since my graduation. That seems out of character. But she did specifically say she was unhappy about her grandmother's death, whatever that meant, and that she was looking into it to a degree. She used those words, but quite matter-of-factly. If you end up talking with her, please encourage her to decide about her grandmother's body. It would be an enormous help. After promising to put in a good word if the opportunity presented itself about the cremation embalming issue, Veena bid Srimati Varini good night and hustled out into the lobby. She found Samira and guided her outside. What did you learn? Samira asked as they walked down the driveway. We have to talk with Cal about this Hernandez woman. She worries me. Even Kashmira Varini is having trouble with her. She said she believes Jennifer Hernandez suspects the death of her grandmother was either medical error or somehow purposeful. In other words, not natural. Samira stopped, suddenly grabbing Veena by the elbow and pulling up short. You mean she thinks her grandmother might have been murdered? In so many words, Veena said. I think we need to get back to the bungalow. I couldn't agree more. Despite the pre-rush hour traffic clogging this street, the women were lucky to find a free auto rickshaw. They climbed into the bench back seat, gave the driver the bungalow address, and then held on for dear life. October 17th, 2007, Wednesday, 4:26 p.m., New Delhi, India. You got a sec? Durrell asked from the library door. Cal looked up from the spreadsheets of Nurses International expenses. The burn rate was impressive, but with things going so well at the moment, he was not concerned as he'd been just 2 or 3 days before. Of course, Cal said, leaned back and stretched his arms over his head. He watched Durrell saunter in and spread several maps on the library table that Cal used as a desk. There were also photos of number of vehicles, which he carefully positioned with his large, powerful hands. Durrell was dressed in one of his signature stretch black t-shirts, which molded over his muscles as if it had been sprayed on. Okay, Durrell said, standing straight and rubbing his hands together with relish. Here's what I found. Before he could continue, the front door slammed shut in the distance hard enough, not only to be heard, but also to rattle Cal's espresso cup in his saucer on his desk. The two men shared a look. What the hell? Cal questioned. Somebody wants to know they're home, Durrell said. He looked at his watch. It was almost 4:30. Must be one of the nurses who had a bad day. No sooner had the words escaped Durrell's lips than Veena and Samira came through the library door. Both started talking at once. Hey, Cal called out, motioning with both hands for them to calm down. One at a time, and this better be important. You've just interrupted Durrell. Veena and Samira exchanged glances. Veena spoke. There is a possible problem at the Queen Victoria. A possible problem? Cal questioned, interrupting her. Veena nodded excitedly. Then I think you should show some consideration. Durrell was speaking. We can go over this later, Durrell said, gathering up the car photos. Cal grabbed his wrist to restrain him and made eye contact. No, continue. They can wait. Are you sure? Durrell said, leaning over to speak directly in Cal's ear. I thought this escape stuff was privileged information. It's okay if Armageddon arrives. I want them with us anyway. Let them hear. They could help. Durrell flashed a thumbs-up sign and stood back up. Listen up, Cal said. Durrell had been working on what is called a contingency plan for a worst-case scenario. But it's privileged information. No telling the others. Their curiosity piqued. The women crowded in against the table, looking at the maps. I hope you realize that including them will add a new level of complexity to get us all hooked up, if and when the plan is activated, Durrell told Cal. You can work out on a later date, Cal said. Let's hear the pitch. Durrell went back to setting out the photos of the vehicles. While he did so, he explained to the women that he'd come up with an idea, of how to get out of the country if the need arose. Veena and Samira exchanged a nervous stare. This was a subject related to what they had come to talk about. First, these are the few potential vehicles to buy and store in that fortress garage we have on the property. The idea would be to have it fueled, packed and ready to go. I believe it should be 4-wheel drive because the roads on my proposed route are not in the best of shape. What's the route you're recommending? Cal asked. We head southeast out of Delhi, use the main highway to Varanasi. From there we'd head northeast to cross the border into Nepal at the Raxaul-Birgunj border crossing. Durrell traced the routes on the maps. Is that a good place to cross? I think it's the best. Raxaul's in India and Birgunj is in Nepal. They apparently are both sprawling shithole cities only a few hundred meters apart, whose major industry, as far as I can tell, is the commercial sex trade for the 2,000 plus truckers who use the crossing each day. Sounds delightful. For what we're looking for, I think it sounds perfect. It's such a backwater crossing. They don't even require visas. It's really just a custom shop. Is this in the mountains? Cal asked. No, it's tropical and flat. It does sound perfect. Then what, once we cross? It's a pretty straight drive up the Prithar highway, on the Nepalese side of Kathmandu, and an international airport. At that point, we'd be home free. There'll be mountains in Nepal, I suppose. Oh yeah. Then I recommend the Toyota Land Cruiser, Cal said, picking up the photo and brandishing it. You got 6 seats plus 4-wheel drive. You got it, Durrell said, picking up the other photos. It was my first choice too. Buy it, get it ready, and put it out at garage. Have the groundspeople start it once a week. Also, let's all pack an overnight bag. If the car keys are going to be left out there, I'm not sure I recommend leaving our bags out there. The fence at the far rear of the property had fallen down in one section. Let's use that dungeon-like room below. The door that goes down to it locks, doesn't it? It's got that big old key that looks like it belonged to a medieval castle. That's what we'll do. We'll each prepare a small suitcase and lock them in the dungeon. What will we do with the key? Durrell asked. We all should know where the key is. If a major problem happens, like this plan is supposed to cope with, we all should know where the key is located. One hang-up could be a problem. Cal glanced around the library. Besides the sizable collection of antique books, there were many knickknacks on the tables and shelves. Cal's eyes soon came to rest on an antique Indian papier-mâché box sitting on the marble mantel. He got up and went over to it. It was intricately painted and glazed, and certainly large enough. After a bit of struggle, he got it open. It was conveniently empty. The key will go in there. What do you say? He held the box up so everyone could see. Everyone nodded as Cal put the Indian craft box in its original position. As he came back to his chair, he regarded the women. Are you okay with all this? You can get a small bag together and get it to Durrell? I mean, small, just for a couple of days. The women nodded again. It all sounds terrific, Durrell, Cal said. Especially since the chances of needing it are about 0, but it's best to be prepared. Cal thought, but didn't say that the stimulus had been Veena's suicide gesture, which certainly had not been anticipated. He glanced at her, amazed at her apparent turnaround. Yet now knowing the story of abuse that she had had to quietly suffer, he couldn't help but wonder if she was stable as she needed her to be. I let Petra and Santana know the details," Durrell said to Cal as he gathered up the maps. Then to the women he said he'd get back to them later about how they would all hook up in the unlikely case the emergency plan had to be activated. Cal nodded to Durrell, but his attention was now directed at Veena and Samira. "Okay," he said, "it's your turn. What is the possible problem?" Veena and Samira erupted together, stopped, and started again, before Samira gestured that she'd give the floor to Veena. Veena described her meetings with Jennifer Hernandez and the Hernandez case manager. Cal raised a hand to stop her and then called out, "Durrell, maybe you should listen to this." Durrell was on his way out the door, wrestling to get his maps folded. He turned around and came back. Cal summarized what the girls had already said, then motioned for Veena to continue. Veena went to tell how Jennifer was thwarting the hospital's ability to deal with the Hernandez body, and more important, that she was actually investigating her grandmother's death. Veena said that the case manager even used the words error and intentional to describe how Jennifer thought the death had been caused. "I'm afraid she doesn't believe it was natural," Veena summarized. "And you told me that could not happen, but it was impossible for someone to even imagine such a thing. But this Jennifer Hernandez is doing just that, and it gives me a bad feeling about all this." Okay, Cal said, raising his hand and gesturing for Veena to calm down. "You're getting yourself too worked up here." Cal looked at Durrell. "How the hell could this Hernandez girl be thinking the way she is?" Durrell shook his head. "Beats me, but I think we better find out. Could there be some aspect of this succinylcholine strategy you're not taking into consideration?" "I can't imagine," Cal said. "The anesthesiologist was very specific with our hypothetical case. He said the victim should have a history of some kind of a heart problem. Exactly what it was didn't matter. The person should have a general surgery within 12 hours and the drug be given in an existing intravenous line. That was it, wasn't it?" "That's all I remember," Durrell said. "She's a medical student," Veena added. "She knows about this stuff." "That shouldn't matter," Cal said. "We got the plan from an anesthesiologist, and he said it was foolproof." "She has arranged for 2 medical examiners to come to India," Samira said. "That's right," Veena agreed. "It's not just she we have to think about." "And she mentioned my patient Ben Fati to Veena, meaning she already knew about him," Samira added. "Once the information has been on CNN, anyone can know about it," Cal said. "That's not an issue." "But aren't you worried about the medical examiners coming?" Veena asked. "They are forensic pathologists. It certainly worries me." "The medical examiners don't worry me for 2 reasons. One, it sounds like from what you have said, the Queen Victoria has no intention of allowing an autopsy to take place. And 2, even if one was done and they found some evidence of succinylcholine, it would be attributed to the succinylcholine the patients are known to be given as a part of their anesthesia. The only reason that worries me is to an extent that this Hernandez, having a suspicion in the first place, what could have caused her to suspect anything? Maybe it's just paranoia on her part," Durrell suggested, "and the fact that there were 2 deaths back to back." "That's an interesting idea," Cal said. "You know, that could be it. Think about it. Out of the blue, she finds out her grandmother is dead after surgery in India, of all the places. She has to fly all the way here. Then the hospital pressures her to make a decision about what to do with the body before she is ready. On top of that, there is another similar death. It's enough to make anyone paranoid. Maybe the only lesson we should be learning here is not to do two in a row in the same hospital. But Samira had a perfect patient, Durrell said, defending his girlfriend. And she was eager. We have to reward that kind of initiative. No doubt, and we did. You did a terrific job, Samira. It's just from now on, let's not do the same hospital 2 nights in a row. We have to spread them out. After all, we have nurses in 6 hospitals. It doesn't make sense to take any risks whatsoever. Well, we're not taking that kind of risk tonight, Durrell said. Is there another one tonight? Veena asked apprehensively. Don't you think we should let things slide for a few days or a week, or at least until Jennifer Hernandez leaves? It's hard to stop with the success we are seeing, Cal said. Last night in the States, all 3 networks picked up the CNN's lead and ran segments about Asian medical tourism with the theme, "It might not be as safe as assumed." It was powerful. It's true, Durrell said. The message is hitting home in a big way. Santana has heard from a CNN contact that they are already getting reports of medical tourism cancellations. You can't argue with success, as my daddy always used to say. What hospital is going to be involved tonight? Veena asked, in the same serious tone. She was not trying to hide her opposition to another case so soon after the first 2, especially since it had been she who started the program. The Esculapian Medical Center, Cal said. Raj called today to say that his patient, David Lucas, who's in his 40s, was a terrific candidate. He'd had abdominal surgery to control obesity this morning. Cardiac-wise, he couldn't be better. He had his stent inserted 3 years ago, so is known to have obstructive disease. We've also made it easier, Durrell said. We took Samira's excellent suggestion about succinylcholine. We now have our very own supply, so there wouldn't be any dangerous sneaking around the ORs. That's right, Cal said. We got it today. Those are the kinds of suggestions we need to make this plan better and safer. I think we should pay bonuses to them to encourage such constructive thinking. Then I think Samira should get a bonus, Durrell said, giving Samira a congratulatory squeeze. And Veena a bonus for breaking the ice, Cal said. He gave Veena an equivalent hug, and the shapeliness and firmness of her body beneath her nurse's uniform instantly turned them on. Does that mean you don't plan on doing anything about Jennifer Hernandez? Veena asked. She immediately pulled away from Cal. She was surprised Cal and Durrell weren't as concerned as she was about Jennifer's interest in looking into her grandmother's death. I made an effort to find out where she's staying, thinking you would want to know. Where is she staying? At the Amal Palace. Is she now? What a coincidence, since that's where we all stayed when we interviewed you women for Nurses International. Cal, I'm being serious. So am I. But I'm not going to have anything to do with that woman, not as one of the principals of Nurses International. Whereas you could, without arousing any suspicion. If you are so concerned, why don't you come up with a reason to meet her again and find out the source of her suspicions? I'm sure you'd find Durrell is right, that it's her own paranoia. And it will be a relief for you and for us to know there isn't some clue we're missing. I couldn't, Veena said with a shake of her head, as if shivering off a touch of nausea. Why not? Even just thinking of her gives me flashes of her grandmother's face, contorting as she was dying, and even worse, I hear the grandmother, thanking me all over again. Then by all means don't meet with her, Cal said with an edge of his voice. I'm just trying to suggest how you can deal with your anxieties. Maybe I shouldn't be doing this at all, Veena said suddenly. Now let's not go off the deep end. Remember, you don't have to do any more patience. You're done. You were to start off the ball rolling, that's all. You are in a supporting role now. I mean, maybe none of us should be doing this. That's not your role to decide. Just consider it your dharmic duty to support the others, and remember, this activity has freed you from your father, and it's going to bring you and your colleagues, including Samira here, to a completely new freedom in America. Veena stood for a moment, nodding as if agreeing, then turned and left the room without saying anything additional. Is she gonna be all right? Jirel asked, looking back at the others after watching Veena silently exit. She's going to be fine, Samira said. It's going to take a while. She suffers more than the rest of us. Her problem is that she hasn't had nearly the westernizing internet experience we've had, and as such, she is still way more an acculturated Indian than we are. As an example, when she finally started talking to me today after being mad at me for revealing her deep dark secret to you, one of the first comments she made was not to rejoice at finally being free at last from her father and be able to follow her dreams. Instead, that her family had been shamed. I think I'm beginning to understand, Cal said. What worries me, though, is the suicide thing. Is there any chance she'll try to do it again? No, definitely not. She did it because she felt she was expected to do it in the context of her religion and her family. But you saved her, so that's that. It wasn't to be her karma to die. Even if she thought it was, no, she won't try it again. Let me ask you something else, Cal said. Since you are her best friend, does she ever talk about sex? Samira laughed hollowly. Sex? Are you joking? No, she never talks about sex. She hates sex. Well, let me amend that. I know she wants to have kids one day, but sex for sex's sake? No deal. Not like other people I know. Samira winked at Jirel, who snickered behind a closed fist. Thanks, Cal said. Should have asked you these questions weeks ago.